The story of Job's suffering causes readers to really question how God could still be good and just. Job is suffering, but why? Either Job is a good guy being punished by a bad God, or he's a bad guy being punished by a good God. By God's own admission, Job was a good and faithful person, but Satan bets that if God took away his blessings, he probably wouldn't stay loyal for long. So, did he? Throughout Job's ordeal, he's prodded towards sin 3 separate times by different outside influences. Once by Satan, who changes his circumstances, taking away his kids, his wealth, and his health. But Job's innocence is confirmed in Job 1 verse 22. Then again, he's tested by his wife, who says, "Curse God and die." But Job's innocence is confirmed once more in Job 2 verse 10. And then later, his friends test him, saying, "You must have sinned, just admit it." But Job's innocence is confirmed yet again in Job 42 verse 7. Notice, we are discussing Job's innocence in this particular situation, not his perfection. Undoubtedly, Job was a sinner, just like all of us. But the thing we find unjust, God's treatment of Job, is not a punishment for sin. In this, he is innocent. At the end of the story, one character aside from Job escapes God's harsh judgment based on his actions, and that's Elihu. He burned with anger at Job because he justified himself rather than God. He burned with anger also at Job's 3 friends because they had found no answer, although they had declared Job to be in the wrong. Sure, Job is in the wrong for justifying himself rather than justifying God, and his friends are wrong because they're saying Job deserves all of this horrible outcome despite having no real accusation against him. But these are the 2 same things that we do. We say that God is unjust and guilty, or we say that Job is unjust and guilty. Elihu takes the middle ground, which refuses to minimize Job's wrongful harshness towards God, and refuses the friend's conclusion that Job is somehow guilty and deserving of these circumstances as a punishment. He says, "Of a truth, God will not do wickedly, and the Almighty will not pervert justice. Who gave him charge over the earth, and who laid on him the whole world? If he should set his heart to it and gather to himself his spirit and his breath, all flesh would perish together, and man would return to dust." God does the same at the end of the book. He corrects Job's wrong thinking towards himself, but he also shows that it wasn't just because of his actions that these things happened. And the New Testament follows suit. In James 5:11, Job is known as steadfast, and we learn in John 9:2 that not all circumstances are a result of sin. So who's the bad guy in the story? Clearly, Job isn't a perfect person, but the trials of God don't seem to act like punishment for some specific sin. So why would a good God allow all of this to happen to a good man? God allows all of this to happen as a test to show Job's loyalty, as it says in chapter 1. And Job withstood the test pretty well. At the end of the story, God mercifully meets with Job, and we see that he realizes that Job's loyalty isn't dependent on his circumstances. Often, our faith is put to the test, and we sometimes fail because it is hard. And sometimes we ask, is it me or is it God? Am I doing something wrong, or is God being unfair? But this might be the wrong question. Maybe our situations are a lot more like Job's, where it's not God being mean to you for doing something wrong, but prodding you to seek an audience with him. Thanks for watching Magnified. If you found our content helpful, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss an episode. We really appreciate your support.